This tragic incident took place in 2002 and involved 15-year-old Stephanie R.G. Berg. Stephanie, born in Ludenscheid, Germany, had an older brother. In 2002, her mother, Sylvia, decided to move to Spain for the summer, specifically to the Balearic Islands. After a divorce, she saw the islands as a fresh start. Sylvia thought Mallorca would be a great place to rethink her life and begin anew. Sylvia moved to the island with her children, and they settled in the El Arenal area of Mallorca. There was sun and warmth year-round, so Stephanie was excited about the idea. Not long before these events, Sylvia had met a new man, Peter, and they agreed to go on vacation together with his son. Initially, Sylvia went to the island alone, leaving her teenagers with their grandparents in Germany while she prepared for the move. She wanted to get everything ready before the school year ended and the summer vacation began. Sylvia even found a temporary job as a hotel manager. Stephanie and her brother eagerly awaited the holidays, packing their things. The moment their school year ended, they joined their mother in Mallorca, where they would spend the summer. Sylvia rented an apartment and moved in with Peter and his children. For 15-year-old Stephanie, this summer was a big event. She quickly immersed herself in the local nightlife. It was typical for a girl her age to be drawn to parties, and she loved the freedom. She met a group of other young people on the island, and it wasn't uncommon for her to stay out late or even disappear for a couple of days. Her mother, Sylvia, was worried about her behavior. She often argued with Stephanie about her late nights and unpredictable schedule. Peter, Sylvia's partner, didn't approve of the way Stephanie was acting, and he would try to talk to her to bring some order to the household. Stephanie, torn between obeying her mother and the desire to have fun with her friends, eventually started to understand her family's concern for her safety. But she was still a teenager, and the temptation to party on a beautiful island was too strong. After a few days of tension, Sylvia managed to get through to her daughter. Stephanie agreed to tone down her behavior and be more considerate of her family. However, Stephanie's love for parties wasn't easily extinguished, and she kept asking for permission to spend time out with her friends. By the end of July 2002, after several promising conversations, Sylvia finally agreed to let Stephanie enjoy the remaining days of her summer. On July 31, 2002, Stephanie asked once again to go out with her friends. Sylvia, convinced that Stephanie had learned her lesson, allowed it. The girl promised to return home before midnight. Sylvia and Peter went to bed, trusting that their daughter would keep her word this time. The next morning, Sylvia woke up and found Stephanie's bag tossed carelessly in the hallway. She suspected that her daughter had returned late and perhaps was a little tipsy. Sylvia decided to check on her, but when she entered Stephanie's room, she was shocked to find the bed empty. Peter had already woken up, but he hadn't seen Stephanie either. After hours of waiting and still no sign of Stephanie, Sylvia's worry grew. It wasn't unusual for Stephanie to disappear for a day or two, but as time passed, fear set in. A week later, with no word from her daughter, Sylvia contacted the police. The investigation into Stephanie's disappearance took a dark turn. The police followed leads, but they couldn't uncover any new information. They theorized that Stephanie had wandered off and fallen asleep on the beach, but there was no evidence to support that. With no ransom demands or attempts to contact the family, the case seemed hopeless. The search continued, and the community helped by putting up flyers. But the longer Stephanie stayed missing, the more it seemed like she might never return. Months went by, and in September 2002, the body of a young woman was found on an abandoned farm in El Arenal. The remains were in poor condition, but a DNA test confirmed that the body belonged to Stephanie. It was clear now, the young girl had been murdered. As the investigation continued, police focused on a local DJ named Marcus, who had been seen with Stephanie the night she disappeared. But after questioning him, Marcus's story checked out. He insisted that Stephanie had left his apartment alive and well. the police were back to square one. Then, a tip led them to a man named Torsten, who had been living in the same apartment building as Sylvia's family. He had a criminal past and had escaped from prison just before meeting them. When detectives tracked him down, they found troubling evidence. Torsten had recently made alterations to a vehicle, and the mechanic who worked on it described suspicious items he had brought in. In February 2003, the police tracked down Torsten to a residence in Germany. There, they uncovered the horrifying truth about what had happened to Stephanie and who was responsible for her murder. He realized that the man was planning a restyling and the contents of the bag were quite funny, satisfying the unhealthy sexual fantasies of the man. The rented vehicle was found in a neighboring city, and law enforcement officers were able to track the man himself, who was immediately arrested and charged with murder. Of course, the man denied involvement in the incident and gave only superficial answers about the contents of the bags from the cohabitation car in the victim's apartment in Mallorca. Police officers found in the converted car the same bag that was later called a satisfactory rape kit. It was carried with him, and they managed to find a similar set described by a mechanic, including cable ties, several sex toys, lingerie, balls with chloroform, sleeping pills, and photographs of the intimate contents of many girls. There were also 2 bottles of chloroform with Spanish labels and a dummy pistol, apparently used to intimidate and lure victims into the car. It turned out that before the disappearance of Stephanie Thorne, he had bought chloroform at the pharmacy, and the pharmacist identified him when the police contacted the company that provided cars for rent. They managed to find out that the minibus was listed as stolen. This only strengthened the suspicion against Thorne. Finally, a forensic medical examination was completed, and all the accompanying tests on Stephanie Tosi's body showed that there was chloroform in the victim's body. In the opinion of the prosecutor's office, this was of decisive significance since now the authorities could directly link Thorne to the crime. He probably lured her out of the house with the help of a dummy gun. Presumably after that, the killer used chloroform to put the girl to sleep and rape her without any hindrance. This is a strong sedative that, including rapists, remains in the body after inhalation, but not for a long time unless the person remains alive. According to experts, Stephanie died from inhaling too much chloroform and was poisoned. In addition to the bag with a set of dubious items in the car, during inspection, another woman's handbag was found inside. There were documents inside, and detectives even managed to track the owner. She turned out to be an 18-year-old girl who, fortunately, was able to survive a meeting with the criminal. The victim admitted that she had accidentally met Thorne in the parking lot. She simply said hello to this man and walked on, and then woke up inside an unfamiliar van. Judging by her words, she also did not suffer from an overdose and survived. Fortunately, the girl was able to recognize the criminal. According to the second victim of the rapist, she did not receive any injuries. She managed to escape as soon as she woke up from the chloroform. At that moment, Thorne was not in the cabin. The girl ran out through the unlocked back door of the car and disappeared. Now Thorne was charged with raping this girl, but he continued to remain under suspicion. After Stephanie's body was found on an abandoned farm, the medical examiner carefully examined it, as well as forensic scientists, and they managed to find evidence that the killer lived with the decomposing body for more than a month. This was also confirmed with the help of specially trained dogs that unmistakably recognized the smell of Thorne. Despite clear evidence, the man continued to persist and refused to admit guilt. To get the killer to talk, one of the investigators volunteered to work undercover. He ended up in prison in the same cell with him and quickly found a common language with the suspect. The police officer actually managed to get a partial confession. The conversation was recorded on tape. Thorne said that he killed Stephanie but insisted that it was all an accident. According to him, after the girl returned from a party, he met her in the apartment. The rapist had already noticed her for a long time and was waiting for the moment to take advantage. That night, the right moment came. The girl was tipsy and her family was asleep, so he decided to take a risk. The man began to pester Stephanie, and she began to resist. An argument broke out between them. He did not describe all the details but said that Stephanie attacked him first. In response, the criminal simply pushed the schoolgirl but did not calculate the force. She hit her head and lost consciousness. It is curious that he never mentioned the chloroform that was found in her body. Thorne was in a panic. He immediately took the teenager's body from the apartment and took it to the territory of an abandoned farm. Here, the man lived with the body, fearing that it would be discovered until he finally decided to escape to Germany. His story sounded implausible. After all, the victim was not found to have a head injury, which means he lied about the cause of death. In general, it seemed strange that the relatives of the murdered girl did not immediately suspect a neighbor who disappeared at the same moment when Stephanie disappeared in August 2006. 4 years after the murder, the prosecutor's office finally charged Thorne with deadly assault, so he was charged with the crime and sentenced to 10 years in prison. The prosecutor's office requested the maximum sentence. The lawyer insisted that Thorne's confession was obtained fraudulently, so the recording could not be used to bring charges. In addition, according to the defense lawyer, Stephanie's body was contaminated with chloroform after death by accident, although this version sounded absurd. But now it was necessary to refute it. It required additional research, and in the end, it was possible to exclude an accident. According to criminologists, the content of chloroform in the blood was too high for an accident. It was believed that the criminal deliberately poisoned the schoolgirl so that she would not hand him over to the police. The prosecutor's office also believed that Thorne's confession was obtained lawfully, and this was enough to bring charges. After examinations, the defendant was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder with obvious narcissistic character traits. The lawyer insisted on leniency since Thorne had a difficult childhood. Soon after birth, his parents separated, and his childhood was spent in a dysfunctional environment. He was replaced by several cruel stepfathers. Eventually, his mother also abandoned him. He moved often and changed schools frequently. Therefore, he was unable to build long-term relationships with anyone in his life. Thorne did not have people who would consider themselves close friends. His own mother periodically appeared in his life and then disappeared again. According to the lawyer, all this had a profound impact on him in his early years. He simply did not know what kindness, love, and parental care were, and this made a huge contribution to the formation of his antisocial personality structure. He had difficulty fitting in. There were always problems. He was often a bully, and it all ended in constant conflicts. After the first hearings, Thorne was sentenced to 10 years in prison, the maximum possible term. The defendant and his lawyer did not agree with this decision. The defense continued to fight, and he managed to get the case reviewed. The judge decided that the confession of the accused, obtained illegally, would not be used as evidence. Despite this, the rapist and murderer were still sentenced. Already after 11 years in prison, the jury decided that he was guilty of premeditatedly causing the death of a girl, plus 1 year was added for concealing evidence with the help of physical evidence. The prosecutor's office managed to convincingly prove that the criminal was waiting for his victim in the apartment. She returned and even changed into pajamas to go to bed, but here he attacked her, raped her, and then killed her. To hide the traces of the crime in the body of the victim, the criminal took her to a nearby farm. He lived with the body for more than a month, fearing it would be discovered. Meanwhile, he actively participated in all search operations, was recorded in almost all raids, and also provided strong support to the family of the missing girl. Of course, all this was done so that suspicion would not fall on him. Until the capture of the criminal, The family of the heroine of the story did not know that they had allowed into their apartment a man who had escaped from prison in another country. He was accused of several robberies, as well as an attack on another girl for sexual reasons, which was also committed with the help of chloroform. In prison, Thorne was an exemplary prisoner. He was even an assistant to the priest. For another attack, he received a suspended sentence. He served his sentence and was released after 11 years. Stephanie's family insisted on a stricter punishment and was disappointed with such a lenient sentence. A similar position was held by police officers in Spain and Germany who participated in the joint investigation. They believed that Thorne was a time bomb, and the incident that happened with Stephanie and the girls who survived similar attacks was only a matter of time before he would attack again, rape, and kill. It is known that Thorne now lives in Germany. It is unknown where and under what exact name his photos are hidden. He no longer appeared in criminal episodes. Thank you for watching.